Dealers, need more used cars fast? With Kelley Blue Book Instant Cash Offer, you can connect directly with local sellers to win more inventory, improve look to book, and lower cost to market. That's the instant advantage. Request a demo today at b2b.kbb.com/ICO.
Welcome to Daily Drive for Friday, June 5th, 2026. I'm Kellen Walker in Las Vegas. Today on the show, Canada's largest auto workers union is heading into contract talks with a message for the Detroit Three. Don't even think about concessions. Tesla is on a roll in China, but there's a catch. And VW could bring more Golf variants to the US. But one big thing has to happen first. Plus, auto loan delinquencies are creeping up. And a payments expert says lenders are ignoring a simple fix that Amazon figured out years ago.
We've actually seen a 9% lift in payments recovered just by doing that, just by saying, hey, we're seeing a failure here. Perhaps you should try one of these methods instead.
Let's run through all the news you need to know to keep up in the auto industry. Unifor is heading into contract talks with the Detroit Three with a firm message: no concessions. The union represents about 18,000 workers at Ford, GM, and Stellantis plants in Canada. It picked Ford as its opening target when talks begin June 22nd. Unifor President Lana Payne says workers are prioritizing wages, retirement security, and getting laid off members back on the job. That's even as U.S. tariffs freeze investment and 2 Ontario assembly plants sit idle. Unifor aims to wrap up Ford talks by July 10th. Contracts expire September 20th. Tesla is holding its ground in China. The company's Chinese-made EV sales jumped 39% in May compared to a year ago, its 7th straight month of growth. According to the China Passenger Car Association, Tesla delivered nearly 86,000 vehicles last month, including exports to Europe and other markets. But Tesla is still waiting on regulatory approval in China to roll out its most advanced driver assistance features, while local rivals like BYD race ahead on smart driving technology. And Volkswagen could expand its Golf lineup in the U.S. as production moves from Germany to Mexico in 2027. VW Group of America CEO Kjell Gruner says more variants are on the table, but whether they arrive depends heavily on where tariffs land. Here to talk more about it is our own Jack Walsworth, who covers Volkswagen Group and its brands for us at Automotive News. Jack, welcome back to Daily Drive.
Hey, Kel. Good to be here.
All right, Jack. So VW dropped the entry-level Golf in the U.S. back in 2021. What would bringing it back mean for the brand's positioning here?
Yeah, I think it would be a good win for the brand for a couple of different reasons. One, the Golf has been around for a very long time. It goes back, several decades. It's one of those nameplates that I think when people think of Volkswagen, obviously think of Beetle and the bus, but then Golf is probably right up there too. And, I think it's one of those models that really speaks to the beauty of Volkswagen, fun, practical cars that are affordable, fun to drive, engaging, but also like very usable and whatnot. A hatchback isn't the craziest product idea, but the Golf definitely kind of makes it fun and entertaining. So I think from that standpoint, it would be like a good emotional win for the brand. It'd be something that people might be like, oh, I remember the Golf. I'll come into a Volkswagen showroom. And then also it would give, Volkswagen dealers another vehicle. Their lineup isn't really that big, all things considered. It's not, they've got some crossovers, they've got the Jetta, and they have the Golf GTI and the Golf R more as like performance vehicles. But generally speaking, the lineup's kind of small. So I think giving dealers another entry affordable vehicle would be a big win, especially, vehicles keep getting more expensive. We don't necessarily expect that changing anytime soon. So getting another affordable model in the lineup that's also fun to drive seems like a win. So, it's one of those things I think it would play for a couple of different ways, both on emotions, but also like just practical reasons.
Now, Gruner mentioned tariffs as the deciding factor. What's the realistic threshold where this actually makes business sense for VW?
Yeah, so I feel like the current tariff wouldn't work. And Gruner did say, a 25% tariff on an entry Golf would be difficult. So I think as things stand right now, it doesn't seem likely. But if that number through talks gets lowered, maybe Gruner talked about like 15% being where Volkswagen would like things to be at, and then even lower from there. That's maybe where it probably starts to make more sense. I would imagine if Volkswagen brought the Golf back to the US, it would be USMCA compliant, which would help out the tariff situation. But even then, I mean, a compact hatchback, the margins aren't going to be as great as a Tiguan or a Taos, which are also built in Mexico. So I think it'd have to be obviously lower than what the tariffs are right now, but I'm thinking maybe like that 15% or lower. But we'll see. I mean, I definitely think Volkswagen can make it work on the GTI and the R at the current rate, but it would definitely need to be lower for the non-sporty Golfs. So to be determined.
Perfect. Jack Walsworth, thank you so much for joining me.
Yep, anytime. Thanks, Kel.
Coming up, auto loan delinquencies are on the rise, and a payments expert says lenders are missing a trick that e-commerce mastered years ago. That's next on Daily Drive.
Dealers, need more used cars fast? You're not alone. And waiting for inventory to show up isn't much of a strategy. That's where Kelley Blue Book Instant Cash Offer comes in. Backed by Kelley Blue Book's 100 years of trusted valuation expertise, Instant Cash Offer connects you directly with local sellers so you can win more inventory right when you need it. And because the experience is transparent and consistent from the first click, it helps build trust early, before a customer ever walks through your doors. That trust matters. It sets expectations up front, reducing friction in the appraisal process. What that means for your team is more control over how inventory comes onto your lot and more time focused on selling cars, not chasing them. It's a smarter way to source inventory in today's competitive market, and that's the instant advantage. If you're ready to connect with local sellers, win more inventory opportunities, and lower cost to market with an approach dealers rely on, check out Kelley Blue Book Instant Cash Offer. Request a demo today at b2b.kbb.com/ICO.
Welcome back to Daily Drive. I'm Kellen Walker. 30-day auto loan delinquencies are at some of their highest levels since the pandemic and ticking up. PayNearMe's Steve Kramer says part of the problem isn't borrowers, it's lenders who've built clean payment portals for customers who follow the happy path and ignored everyone else. Kramer is vice president of product at PayNearMe, a payment technology company that works with auto lenders. He joins our own Dan Shine to talk about what an abandoned cart strategy looks like for loan servicing and why a declined payment is actually an opportunity.
Steve, thanks so much for joining me on the F&I Friday edition of Daily Drive.
Dan, thanks for having me.
Seems, I guess, since the pandemic, there's been a lot of focus on people who have defaulting on loans and repossessions and things like that. And it seems to be, again, inching up a little ever so slightly with the economic factors that we have today. But you kind of talk a little bit about on how people want to make payments, but it's just auto payments they're running into friction points. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. Delinquency rates are ticking up. 30-day past dues are at some of the highest levels we've seen since the pandemic. And there are many reasons for it, right? And one of the things you really need to do is figure out how you can remove that friction, make it easy for the consumer. I'll give you an example. I don't know if you're an Amazon shopper. My family certainly is. If you go to Amazon, you put something in your cart and then you leave, you know what happens, right? You get that email. Hey, you put something in your cart. Did you forget about that? There's a reason they and most major e-commerce vendors do that. It's because it works. It's re-engaging the consumer. It's reminding them of, hey, there's something here. And it's tracking a key metric, cart abandonment. That's standard in e-commerce. But in loan management and loan servicing, it's non-existent. If you ask most people in the loan servicing, well, what's your abandonment rate? They kind of look at you like, hadn't really thought about that. That's a key KPI, right? Hey, you've got consumers coming in. They're clearly willing to do something here. They're coming to your site. Most people don't just go to their auto lender site just for fun, right? But they dropped off for some reason. Well, why aren't you tracking that metric? Why aren't you re-engaging that consumer and saying, hey, by the way, we know you came and your bill is still due. And what can you do to help drive that consumer, remind them of the fact that you still have an obligation here, you still really need to pay, and kind of get them back into that payment cycle.
Why is that reason? Is it part of that auto loan providers feel that people are still mailing in a check or they're just doing a bank transfer. And this is just not something they think a large segment of their borrowers do.
It's partially that, but it's also that a lot of these folks, they view the happy path, right? Let me set up a website. Let them pay with these methods. Great. I'm in good shape now, right? I've made it so people can come in. What they don't look at is what happens when that happy path doesn't happen, right? What happens when the consumer either comes in and doesn't pay you or comes in and, to your point earlier, hits some sort of friction, forgot a password, their card didn't work, their card declined, something else occurred to them. And that path is often not looked at by loan servicers to say, wait a minute, okay, I've set up my site, I've got a call center, I've got a website, I'm good, right? I'm ready for consumers to come and pay me. If you build them, they will come kind of thing. But not wait a minute, what happens when something goes wrong? Maybe I should make sure that if something goes wrong, and we kind of look at it as a willingness ability kind of vision. Like if the consumer's willing but not able, what can you do to get them able to it? Or if they're able to but not willing because there's too much friction in there, well, what can you do to help them and get them more willing to pay and make it easier for them?
More and more consumers are used to, like you said, the Amazon experience, like the ride app, the ride share, food delivery. People are becoming more and more comfortable and familiar with that type of transaction that you would think that auto lenders would, also want to get in on. Again, they always talk about, meeting the customer where they are. And I think more and more customers are familiar and comfortable with transacting via mobile or, an app or something that makes their life a little bit easier than going to their bank or writing out a check, if anybody even does it anymore. Again, why is this technology not more common?
It's a great question, right? And it really is. As I said, people kind of view that happy path. I'm good. People are set up. They can come in and the numbers that really should get these auto lenders' attention, right? As you said at the beginning of this, we're seeing an uptick in 30-day delinquencies and in real delinquency, right? In terms of what's going on there. And when you start using technologies like, hey, let me just remind the consumer, hey, you came here, you didn't pay me, you really need to, and use the technology that e-commerce has used for years, we've seen a 7% uptick in consumer payments just from sending those reminders to consumer. That's 7% of those consumers that might have fallen into delinquency, might have paid late, might have had a bad experience with your site that you've just recovered. And by the way, recovered in a self-serve fashion. You didn't have to make outbound calls, which are so expensive, to try and collect those funds. You recaptured those consumers. And those are the numbers that I don't think have been published very well, that really, I think, should get those auto lenders' attention of, wait, are you telling me I can get a 7% uplift in my payments just by simply sending out these reminders to consumers? That's something that, and the KPI of, have I actually looked at my abandonment rate, are things really auto lenders need to keep top of mind.
One other thing you note, and you wrote or kind enough to write a guest commentary for Automotive News on this kind of topic, is also often when someone tries to make a payment on their auto loan and it says, payment unsuccessful for whatever reason, card decline, and that's kind of the end of it. And you say kind of auto lenders need to borrow a page from, rideshare or food delivery apps about how they handle when a payment is declined.
Oh, absolutely. Look, one thing we've seen in the data is when a consumer comes in, they know they have an auto loan they need to pay, and they try and pay, let's say, with a debit card, and it declines. Very, very often we see that consumer try again and try again and try again. You'll see multiple declines in a row. That's bad for multiple reasons, right? One, terrible consumer experience, right? Talk about friction, talk about frustrating your consumer. Two, it's costly, right? Yeah. There is a cost to every single one of those. And three, you're not getting that payment. So what we've seen is if you just take a page out of some of those other applications, ride shares or whatever, and say, hey, we see your payment declined, perhaps you should try one of these methods instead, and offer up what you think is going to be the best method for them to pay so they don't keep trying that same card over and over again. You're going to see an uplift. We've actually seen a 9% lift in payments recovered just by doing that, just by saying, hey, we're seeing a failure here. Perhaps you should try one of these methods instead. And by the way, if you have a really, really troubled consumer, right, where they simply can't pay, again, don't let them drop off. You've got them on the line. Perhaps that for those consumers, you put up something that says, hey, look, we see you're having trouble. Do you need to talk to somebody? And that's an indication to you of, let's jump them in the queue. Let's get them to talk to someone. They're engaged right now, right? Don't let them drop off. And perhaps they need a loan modification, a change of due date, a change of terms, something to keep that consumer from going delinquent at the time that, like I said, while they're engaged in the process.
And something else I found interesting was you talked a little bit about enabling borrowers to invite a friend or family member to cover a payment. And I've been out, with my kids, and whether they were friends, and someone may buy dinner, may buy them a drink at the bar, and they're automatically, on their phone Venmoing them, to cover their portion of the meal or their drink. And this again is something that maybe you suggest that auto lenders should look into. Is like, let someone else, if they've got a family member who might cover that monthly payment for 1 month, they should, enable that to happen.
Yeah, there have been surveys out there that say, hey, look, if you were in financial distress, would you ask a friend or family member to help you out? And it was nearly half of consumers said they would. And we also actually see it in the data. People will say, we'll see a third party, a father, a brother, whoever, helping out and making that payment. And it's going on today. There's studies out there showing, literally, billions of dollars in quote shadow debt. I borrowed this money from my family member or friend. The struggle there is it's already happening for these auto lenders, right? A family member or friend is paying on behalf of a consumer, but the challenge they've got is twofold, right? One, that family member may make a mistake and go, oh yeah, here's my debit card, and accidentally check that little box that says save this on file. Well, that's not good, right? Because now, I now have access to my father's debit card for next month. That's great for me. So that's not good. But the second and probably even more important thing is a consumer asking a family member or friend to pay on their behalf is a real indication that there's something up with that consumer, right? And right now, the lender is completely oblivious to that. They don't know that this occurred. So if you put something in place that says, hey, let's let them invite a family member or friend, make sure that they can't save their debit card or their bank account on file. But let's also, if they invite it, let's send a note to the auto lender so they can go, oh, there's something going on here. I should probably reach out to that consumer before they go delinquent and say, do you need help? Is there something we can do to keep you current? Set up a payment plan, change a due date, change a loan mod of some kind. It gives that auto lender a chance to intervene before that consumer hits delinquency. And that's really the thing. That's such a leading indicator of a problem with that loan or that consumer that they're asking somebody else to pay on their behalf. At least they're asking, which is great. But there's clearly something going on there in the data. So
in closing, there are big benefits for auto lenders who can, track abandonment rates and, kind of re-engage borrowers who've stalled out and are providing kind of a safe way for, them to invite a friend or family member to make a payment.
Yeah, absolutely. You really need to look at it holistically, right? How do I enable these consumers that want to pay me, remove friction, as you said earlier, right? Let them invite a friend or family member in to help them pay and let me know about that. And if they don't pay, let me re-engage them. Let me make sure that they're, you borrow a page from that e-commerce has been using for years to try and pull that in. Anything you can do to find those leading indicators and try and engage that consumer ahead so that you're getting that payment in before they become 30 days or more delinquent. Absolutely. There's huge advantages for auto lenders there.
Steve, interesting conversation. Really appreciate your time.
Dan, thanks for inviting me. It was a great conversation.
PayNearMe's Steve Kramer spoke with our own Dan Shine. That's Daily Drive for today. I'm Kellen Walker. Thanks to Automotive News executive producer Jake Neer, as well as our own Jack Walsworth for his reporting for today's podcast. We also had reporting from David Kennedy of our sibling publication, Automotive News Canada. You can get the latest news on auto retail finance, Volkswagen's U.S. product plans, and everything happening in the auto industry at autonews.com. Come back over the weekend for our weekend drive edition of the show. Our panel of automotive news journalists breaks down the week's biggest stories, including what the UAW's latest strike against a major axle supplier means for production of some of General Motors' core models.
We know anything about Sean Fain. When he goes on strike, he knows what it takes to hurt the company. Think back to when he struck the Detroit 3. He knew what the choke points were. He knew what plants would do the most damage the fastest.
We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you think of the show and the topics we covered today. Send us an email at dailydrive@autonews.com or leave us a voicemail at 313-444-2774. And if you enjoy the podcast, remember to like, leave a review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.